For 5 minutes.
The national conference brought together civil society organizations, various interest groups, seasoned lawyers, members of parliament, both former and current commissioner of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice CHRI, and more. Director of the Africa Office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, Mena Mensah, says some of the punishment for petty offences only affect the poor and vulnerable in society and must be expunged. She has some recommendations on what should be the way forward.
We do not have petty offences in our laws. It is important that we look at what we want to call petty offences in our laws, number one. Number two, whilst waiting for that, I remember a couple of years ago, there was a draft sentencing guideline for judges. It's important that that is revisited, because I think that we haven't decriminalized yet. People will be arrested. They'll have to go through the court system. I have spoken to a number of judges who feel that their hands are tied, although personally some of them I disagree with them, because I think that they have a lot of discretion. So I think that the sentencing guidelines should also be reviewed. I'm not too sure the draft one was accepted and it's being used, but I guess for me, that would be a good way to start the conversation. And number three, the law enforcement agencies themselves, they also have a huge discretion. I think that engaging them whilst waiting to decriminalize, because law reform in this country takes a very long time. But then if there is some kind of education, because we have the Tokyo Principles that states that even in cases where it's obvious that the fundamentals of a crime is there, you do not necessarily have to incarcerate. You can find alternatives like ADR, restitution, victim offender conversations, and stuff like that.
Former CHRI boss Justice Emil Short says successive governments do not appear to have any pity or compassion for prisoners. He says the congestion and state of Ghana's prisons is another reason to decriminalize petty offences.
Look at the condition of the prisons. Unfortunately, our government, both NPP and NDC administration, do not seem to have any compassion for prisoners. I say this without any reservation. You saw for yourself the kind of prison conditions in which people live, overcrowded. And a lot of prisoners have skin conditions. Medical facilities are very few and far between. So I think that in the final analysis, the argument would probably weigh in favor of decriminalizing what we reasonably consider to be petty offenses and find other ways of dealing with these offenses.
Deputy Attorney General Alfred Tuya Yeboah says it is time for the challenges of vulnerable persons are taken into account for the decriminalization of petty offences.
Such petty of that amount of offenses, such as disorderliness, loitering, begging, urinating in the public, and hawking, among others, are matters that we need to look at when it comes to petty offenses in Ghana. In Ghana, examples of such offenses may be found in Section 296 of Act 29, which criminalizes actions such as throwing rubbish in the streets in subsection 1, committing a nuisance while in town in subsection 2, making loud noise to the annoyance and disturbance of any person in subsection 7, idling in a public place in subsection 21, among others. The concern here is that these petty offenses therefore criminalize the livelihood and existence of members of the society who require assistance to improve their circumstances. It is time for their unique challenges to be taken into account. It is important to emphasize that while efforts are made to reassess the impact of this minor offense on vulnerable persons, this is not to suggest that public safety should be sacrificed and public order dismantled.
CHRI boss Joseph Wittal says to jail people for petty offences is to criminalize poverty.
Minor offences for which the punishment is prescribed by law to carry a warning, community service, a low-value fine, or short term of imprisonment, often for failure to pay the fine. Examples include, but are not limited to, offenses such as being a rogue and vagabond, being an idle or disorderly person, loitering, begging, being a vagrant, failure to pay debts, being a common nuisance, and disobedience to parents. Offenses created through bylaws, we have many throughout the MMDAs, aimed at controlling public nuisance on public roads and in public places, such as urinating in public and washing clothes in public, and laws criminalizing informal commercial activities such as kayaye, hawking, and vending. Now, Mr. Chair, based on this definition, the Africa Commission concluded that laws that criminalize petty offenses such as those defined and which I have just quoted have the effect of punishing, segregating, controlling, and undermining the dignity of persons on the basis of their socio-economic status.